I'm so glad everybody came. Thanks for doing that. I get the distinct pleasure of introducing McKenzie Barney. For those of you who don't know, Mac played for the Gators soccer team that I coached. We got her for 5 years, not just 4. We got her for 5. And there's just so many things that I could say about Mac, so I'm going to try and keep it brief because I'm here that she wants to have to talk to you, and she's way more interesting than me. But let me just tell you, the first thing was that when Mac came here as a freshman, her freshman year, she tore her ACL in preseason. And there's nothing worse than being an injured freshman, because it's really hard. It's really hard to find your way and to figure out what you're doing here. But that never slowed Mac, because she is just one of those people who takes on every challenge as it comes, right? Another challenge as she came here was, I wish Vic was here. I don't see him yet. I was going to call him out, but unfortunately he's not in yet. But Mac was like, I'm going to come in here. I'm making an impact. Even after this injury, I'm doing it. And Vic's like, whatever, you're not going to start. Do you remember this? And so then Mac's first year that she was able to play, which would have been her redshirt freshman year, not only did she start, but she was our leading scorer that year, right? So then as her career progressed, I mean, just the things that she did, I mean, these are stats, so I don't want to get caught up in that. But she led the SEC in goals her sophomore year. She also led the SEC in game-winning goals. So not only is she good, but she's good under pressure. And then her junior year, another Macism happened. We're playing in a game, and she fractures her face. And I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. And again, for a lot of people, that's a career ender, because not just the physical side of it, but just dealing with how do you feel coming back from that from a mentality standpoint. Didn't bother Mac. She came right back, had an amazing senior year. When it was all said and done, McKenzie ended up 6th on the career chart for goals with the Gators, which is pretty amazing because we've had some really great goal scorers over the course of the history. And then 7th in points, which again, I mean, to be in the top 10 in any category at a school like Florida is pretty amazing. But the other part of Mac that I really want to talk about is the mentality that she has had. So for those of you who are not familiar with soccer, we have had a fitness test called the beep test, right? The beep test is not fun. Anybody who's done it, you get PTSD from hearing that noise. But the cool thing about the beep test is this, is it continues until you stop, right? So you keep going as far as you can go. And when Mac did that, she holds the record for all Gators of all times in the beep test. And when she did that, she's competing only against herself at that point because everyone else has dropped out. And she's continuing to go after people have dropped out and there's no one left. So it's not like, okay, I'm the last one standing, it's over. Like, it's continuing. And so Mac's ability to push through obstacles like that and to battle herself is what really makes her an outstanding competitor. And the thing I want to talk about competition with Mac is sometimes competition can be a pretty dark place, but Mac always made competition healthy. And what I mean by that is she was there to elevate her teammates. She was there to push everybody to a new height, not to try and suppress anyone so that she could be the top. And that's a really special leader when you have someone like that. Now, besides soccer, Mac has had an incredible athletic career beyond soccer. She's hiked over 6,000 miles. I can't even pronounce some of these places she's been. But one of the things that I think is so cool about that is when you're out in the elements and you're doing your own thing, again, it comes down to you versus yourself. And beating yourself every day is part of what Mac has done since I've known her and will continue to do, I'm sure. For those of you who don't know, she also has an Emmy to her name, which is pretty cool. She's done all these documentaries and films for National Geographic, Outside Television, Fox Sports, interviews with Bill Clinton, Ringo Starr, Hamm, Mike Tyson, and just an amazing career thus far, and I'm sure we're not even close to seeing what's coming next. The last thing I would just say about Mac, because I told you I would give you time back, is that she is somebody who, as a teammate, was really, really highly valued in our program. She showed everyone what it was like to give to others, to elevate a program, and to overcome obstacles. And I mean, I don't know if I could describe a better teammate than McKenzie Barney. Thanks, Mac.
right, I guess the mic is passed over to me now. Thank you so much, Becky, for that incredible introduction. I'm honored to be here in front of all of you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out. I know you all have a busy week of classes, different events, even a game coming up on Thursday against South Carolina that everyone should go to. And what's the plug for that? What time is that? TBD time, but just saying. So thank you again, Becky. I really appreciate it. And I am McKenzie Barney. I was a UF graduate and a captain of Becky's incredible soccer team, which is now Sam's soccer team. And I have some familiar faces from when I spoke this morning to the soccer team, so thank you all for coming out. I was a graduate in 2012 of the telecommunications school in production. And what I'm going to talk to you about today, this is a film event where I'm going to do a little talk, I'm going to show a film, and then I'm going to get to talk with one of my favorite professors, Professor Ted Spiker, afterwards. And you all can ask questions, so please save questions for that. What I'm going to talk to you about today is this latest journey that I just did. It was a multi-year, mostly solo project of cycling the world. So cycling the world, what is it, you ask? It was a 5-continent, 29,000 kilometer or 18,000 mile, 28-country project. And this is where it all began. So I am currently touring this around the US. And it would not be fitting to do a tour without where this foundation was set. And that was here at the University of Florida. So thank you so much for having me. Like I said, I graduated in telecommunications production. I even started a company with 2 of my best friends from the film and journalism school, Philippe and Brian. These are some photos of back in the soccer days, but I'm so honored to be here because UF was such an important part of my path to becoming a filmmaker after I graduated from here. And when I started to climb the ladder, per se, in the film industry, I actually was kind of living someone else's dream, so Becky alluded to. I was filming rock stars like Ringo Starr and John Bon Jovi, and athletes like Hamm, who's one of my idols. But I realized that I was living someone else's dream, and what was funny is I was telling other people's stories before I even knew my own. So I did what a lot of explorers did before me, and I went traveling. And the first way I knew how to do that was by stripping everything away, all forms of identity. So McKenzie, my name, my job, my car, where I lived, all of my things, I shed all of my layers of identity, and I went through hiking, which through hiking is long distance, end-to-end hiking, where you basically are out in the woods for months at a time. And I slowly learned what I truly need in this world. And it turns out that it's not much. So I kind of stripped it all down to the essentials, and I loved what through hiking gifted me. It gifted me this perspective of when you shed layers of identity, you're able to then find out what you really need. So through hiking allowed me to immerse into the wilderness, but I wanted to see far off cultures on our planet and really understand more about the world. That's when I chose the bicycle. So I upped the cadence to 2 wheels. And cycling the world, right? Like, where do you even start? And most people ask me that, like, I had someone ask me that from the soccer team this morning. It was a great question. How do you even start? What bike do you even take? And I always tell them about the beginning of this path, which was in Vietnam. So a dusty old corner in a Southeast Asian country, I found Southeast Asia Cycling Lonely Planet. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a sign. Maybe this is the next cadence of how I should explore the world by human power. So on a hunch, I flew into Ho Chi Minh with only the clothes on my back. I bought a used mountain bike, and I put some bags on the bike and started to cycle north. And if you're familiar, if anyone's been to Vietnam, we have a 30-day visa as Americans. So I had 30 days to get up there. And within 22 days, I made it to Hanoi in the north. And it was cemented that that's how I wanted to see the world. After completing a country, the length of a country by bicycle, I then wanted to see if I could complete a continent. So this was actually in recent post-pandemic world that I traveled 11 countries from Istanbul, Turkey, at the bridge between Asia and Europe, through 11 countries up to the bike capital of the world, which is Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And when I got up there, I realized that I did both of these trips alone. And courage is best built as a callus, right? So I had to wild camp a lot alone. I had to fix mechanicals alone. And I established my independence before my grand journey of cycling the length of Africa. And you're gonna see a lot of this in the film. But I just want to tell you a little bit about this journey, because this is where a lot of things really started to shift for me. I was able to share this experience with my partner, James. So I was sharing this one, and the rest of my entire world journey was solo. But what I learned is how I thought I was comfortable with being uncomfortable. I thought that I could handle the unfamiliar. I thought that through hiking had tested me, Vietnam had tested me, and Europe had tested me, until Africa. So right away, leaving from the pyramids in Egypt, as we get to Sudan, our phone service suddenly shuts off. And we can't get any messages in or out. I'm like, what is going on, right? We come to find out that the military had taken over in a coup. They had kidnapped the president, taken over the airwaves, and now we were stuck in Sudan. We were stuck. My partner was joking. He's like, it's okay, we'll just open a tea shop in Sudan and we'll stay here, for the rest of the time, it'll be okay. And I'm like, no, we have a mission. We are supposed to cycle, to the end of Africa. And eventually, I'll let you see in the film, but eventually we did get out of Sudan. As everyone knows, there's conflict in the north of Ethiopia with the Tigray War. So the fragility of politics that we were hit right away with in Africa it really shook me, and it showed me that at the end of the day, you can only control the controllables. So leading to that, then we keep going into Kenya, and I had a young Samburu tribal boy actually pick up a spear and throw it at two strangers that happened to be me and my partner cycling. And that spear came eerily close to me, but basically it wasn't out of malicious intent. It was just more, a young teenage boy picking something up and throwing it at a stranger. So that shook me a bit more. And then we get down to Botswana. Botswana with the Elephant Highway, one of the largest concentrations of wild elephants in the world. And what you don't want to happen is for a lone male elephant in heat to come and surprise you. And that's exactly what happened to us. So I'm telling you this story because unfortunately I did not get any footage of it, but there's a good reason for that. I thought that would be the last time I would see my partner. So that was shaky as well. But by the end, when we get to Cape Town in South Africa and had completed this 11,000 kilometer 5-month journey, I knew that I was onto something. My partner James, on the other hand, he had too small of a bike for him. And if anyone has had too small of a bike fitting, you know the pains in your knees, the numbness in your hand, the pains in your back. He was done, per se, with cycling. And luckily enough, he encouraged me to continue. So after Africa, I had to secure some more funding, bootstrap my own dreams, make it happen, and then I decided that I wanted to cycle the world. So cycling the world, you ask, what exactly is it? Where did you get these metrics from? Well, in Botswana, we had actually crossed paths with the fastest married couple to cycle the world. Their names are David and Caroline. One is from France, one is from England. And I said, cycling the world, where do you even get this from? They said the Guinness Book of World Records defines cycling the world as 29,000 kilometers or 18,000 miles. Now, it also includes some other rules, visiting 2 antipodal points and continuously going from east to west. But I decided to ignore those and just instead hold on to this metric, this finish line that I could basically cycle towards of 29,000 kilometers. So after Africa, I looked back at the map. And I went back to one of my most familiar countries. This is where my partner James is from, New Zealand. And this was also the scene of my very first thru hike, so how I got into human-powered long-distance voyages. And New Zealand was interesting because I had had some time to work, I had had some time off the bike, and I knew that the South Island would take 2 weeks to cycle. And I came up with this theory. It was the 2-week theory of when you're starting something brand new and you're really uncomfortable with it, you miss your creature comforts for those first 2 weeks. You miss the hot shower, the hot meal, you miss your loved ones. But after 2 weeks, that's when the magic starts happening. That's when your body knows exactly what it needs to do, and then you're able to start rewiring your mind. So I look towards the next country. And Australia holds a very special place in my heart because of the book Tracks. If any of you are familiar with Robin Davidson, she walked across the outback. Yeah, a few of you are. She walked across the outback with her camels, solo. And she was a huge inspiration to me. And also one of the inspirations behind why I want to share this story with you today. Because if it wasn't for Robin and Lael Wilcox, who's an endurance cyclist, and Liz Clark, who circumnavigated on her sailboat alone. If it wasn't for a lot of these explorers and women before me, I wouldn't have felt empowered to do this. So bringing it back to Australia, right? This was my self-endurance goal of trying to cross all of Australia, which geographically, if you take it and put it on top of a map of the US, relatively similar. So it was very ambitious of me to set a 30-day goal to cross Australia. But I flew into Melbourne at the worst time and season, the dead middle of summer, to cross the Australian outback. But the seasons didn't match up, and I just decided to go anyways. What I learned is that the days, they don't get easier. They actually get harder. You just get stronger. So after Australia, I made my goal, and I got to the Indian Ocean in Perth in 30 days. And then I said, I have about 6,000 kilometers left to reach this self-made finish line metric. Where should I go? Should I go to North America, where I would be a little more familiar? Or should I go to South America and really shake things up for the grand finale? So I flew into the world's largest salt flats in Uyuni, Bolivia, in the middle of winter. And the nights were below freezing. And I continued up into Peru, where I was summiting mountain passes of over 16,000 feet on a daily occurrence, sometimes days away from human contact. I had to fix mechanicals on my own. I ran out of food once. The Peru Great Divide is where I started to really feel like I was onto something. And when I hit my metric in Bogota, Colombia, of 29,000 kilometers, I realized something very important, that it's in the unknown that we transform. And it's shaky, and it's uncomfortable, and it's difficult, especially for those first 2 weeks, but it is worth it. So I started with telling you that I was a storyteller who wanted to go out into the world to find my own story. And by going out into the world, I actually was exploring more of my inner atlas than I could ever imagine. This was a story that I didn't have my big cinema cameras with. I actually never intended to tell this story. I never intended to show this film because I never was filming it for anyone but myself, my friends, and my family. And right around Africa, my family started to ask, well, what's it like? You know, what is going on a daily basis? And I said, All right, well, the only way I can really explain that is by pulling out a camera and showing them. And what I'm about to show you is a story that I never meant to tell, but sometimes those are the most important stories. So this is my film, Cycling the World. Like I said in the beginning, I'm touring this film around the US right now. It's only available to be seen at these events. So I'm very honored to have you all watch it today at the University of Florida that's held so close to my heart for so many reasons. This is the website of the film. You can also find my contact information here. And without further ado, I'll show you my film. It's about 33 minutes, so I hope you all enjoy.
A few years ago, I wanted to see the world by bicycle. After walking the length of continents, I decided to increase the cadence to 2 wheels. So I bought a bike in Vietnam and rode north, unaware that this would be the start of a multi-year solo journey to cycle the world. Through Africa, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and South America. Navigating with my partner in Africa, but most of the time alone. Many things changed on the surface, crossing 28 borders and the equator twice. But as the kilometers wound closer to 29,000, the real revolution was happening inside. This is the untold truth of what happened along the way. This is my story of cycling the world.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. I guess my first question is, I feel like there are so many layers to this journey. There's mental, there's physical, there's cultural, there's logistical. I would imagine it's a cumulative effect on what this did for you. Identify like one moment on this whole trip that said, this is it. Like, this is what redefined me. This is what really hit home for me.
Such a great question from one of my favorite professors at UF, gotta say. I'm honored to be up here. Thanks so much, Ted, Professor Spiker. I'm buying myself some time because there were quite a few moments. So that scene in South America where I had that climb, that happened in Peru before my final country of Colombia. And that had to be it, to answer your question. That, for me, was worth everything. I realized that it was kind of this small moment that really reflected the entirety of my journey, which was I did not think I could do this climb. Like, I'll admit it, for an hour, waited before at the foothills of the climb in case a truck randomly came by, and I probably only saw 2 cars a day out there. That's how much I didn't think I could do this climb. So that scene is just, I was very emotional when I got towards the top. And that, to me, encapsulated the entire Cycling the World journey, because you have no idea how to start, but little by little you get closer and closer, and eventually you've cycled the world. So that, to me, was very emblematic of the entire thing.
Yeah, but you did the beep test. Like, yeah, that is the climb. Like, so I'm fascinated by leading up to this. Like, to be an elite athlete at a program like this, it takes so much, right? There's competition, there's discipline, there's structure, there's teamwork. There's all these elements that I assume informed some of this. But I also think it's different in that it was so individual. Like, you didn't have to follow a structure, right? And there were just things that weren't the same. So I'm wondering if you could break that down a little bit for us. What are the similarities between being a competitive athlete, and what are the differences here?
So many similarities. Literally everything that I brought to this journey and to thru hiking and to my career were learned here at the University of Florida. At the soccer program, of course, but also at the School of Journalism. Just to touch on the athletic part of it, I was talking to the girls this morning actually about this, but mentality, and Becky kind of shared a few stories. My mental toolkit was huge for me on this. So I always had in the back of my mind, you know, my 1 or 3 things that I had conquered, and maybe the beep test was on that, but things that I thought I wasn't capable of, but I tried anyways, I pursued it anyways, and it all worked out. So that mental toolkit for me became huge, and that's one of my big takeaways from athletics. Another one is I had a myriad of different experiences when I played for the Gators. And sometimes I was leading on the field, sometimes I was leading on the bench, sometimes I was leading in fitness. And just controlling what you can, and the rest that's out of your control, you did everything that you could, right? So the Africa portion of that was the epitome of surrendering to the experience, right? And how I talk about the 2 different brain hemispheres, knowing what you can so that you can allow the unknown to unfold. And that's actually something that I picked up here at the UF.
I mean, we saw some of that pain that you went through, but how did your body hold up? I mean, that's crazy, right?
It held up a lot better than when I was here playing soccer. I'll tell you that. For real. How many surgeries did we say, Em? How many? I mean, I had a lot of injuries while I was here. Yeah, so yes, it held up surprisingly a lot better than when I was playing soccer here. I think I got all my injuries done here. Yeah, I'd say physically, you know, knock on wood, I got very lucky. I had 0 injuries in these 3 years that it took me to cycle the world.
Rank in order of difficulty: climbs, headwinds, flat tires.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. Okay, headwinds, always the most difficult. Okay, like I will take any uphill any day. So headwinds, most difficult.
How many flat tires did you have?
Am I alone, or am I with someone with the flat tires?
You are alone.
Flat tires second.
Really?
Because it's a mental game, right? Like, I would always time myself on flat tires. I think, to answer your question, I think I got about 30 or 35 flat tires this entire time, 17 of which were in Africa. Tanzania is the shoulder of their roads. All the truck drivers throw glass out. But yeah, flat tires are quite a mind game. And you have to just really believe that you're going to find the problem. So you don't find whatever pierced your tire and pull it out of your tire, you're gonna have, where are the cyclists? You're gonna have you're gonna continue to have multiple flats throughout the day. And that is the worst, that's a nightmare. So you always have to find what the problem is. And what was the third one? I'm trying to remember. Oh, it was climbs.
Yeah, so climbs
wow,
third.
Okay, I guess I ranked climbs third.
Okay. When you read about people who do these amazing epic things, and this is like all caps epic what you did, you often read about how difficult it is to transition out of them. You know, I mean, and that's anything from having a collegiate career and transitioning out to doing something like you did and transitioning out. What was it like getting back to reality, and how did you deal with that?
In the thru hiking world, we call that post-hike blues, but you're exactly right. It can happen. It happened after I graduated from UF and wasn't playing soccer anymore. You know, you're surrounded by such a deep purpose. And that's what happens on long thru hikes or long bike rides too, or long bus rides. This immediate stepping out of a purpose, where every day you're getting closer to a purpose, right? Every day you're getting closer to your goal. It's tough. I found that's why I would always have something on the horizon to look forward to. So this was not continuous. It was not, from Vietnam to Europe, I had a lot of time in between. And then from Europe to Africa, I had maybe 2 weeks. So it was never like I was flying right to the next place to start again. I always had to reflect on what just happened and then start to plan for what's next. And where that got really tough was when I finished in Bogota, Colombia, at my finish line. And I was like, okay, this is done now. Am I ready to be done and content? And what happened that I don't talk about in the film is I actually was met head on in Colombia with one of the worst refugee crises going on in our world today. And that was a lot of Venezuelan refugees, many of which were around my age with young children who were walking their way towards a better life. And I realized that they were doing a human-powered struggle that was unselective, where here I was able to select traveling the world. I had the passport to do it, the capabilities to do it, and I had this opportunity and privilege to see the world by bicycle. That to me really hit home hard, and that helped me be very content with putting the bike in the garage and starting to create this film and tell these stories now.
Yeah. Courage is a big theme in the film for sure. When we had our first team call with you, when we were talking about this, we were all like, okay, 1, you're amazing. 2, thank you for making us all feel inadequate about our life goals now. But courage is big, and we look at this film and say, oh my gosh, how did you do this? When were you most scared?
I was scared almost every day. Let's just throw that out there, right? So, fear is a big one. It's all about your relationship with fear and knowing when they're actually something that you should consider and something where you're worrying so much that you're suffering twice, per se. I was scared on a daily basis. Do I have enough water? Did I bring enough food? In one of those situations, I got really caught out and I didn't have enough food. When was I the most scared? I really do think I was the most scared when I left the comforts of, like I said, I had a work period in between Africa and New Zealand. And in that time, I was saving up money, and I also realized that I wanted to cycle the world. And in that time is where I basically committed to this massive goal, right? This huge goal. And then when I started in New Zealand, I had to leave my loved ones behind. I had to leave everything, all these creature comforts that I had started to collect while I was working behind. And that's when I was the most scared. And that's where that 2-week theory comes in, because you're just playing a mind game with yourself. You just need to get over that hump. And then you're able to see the magic of what you're really capable of. But there's those 2 weeks where something's pulling at you to come back to the habits, the routine, come back to the safe zone. It's our brain protecting us, but that's not where the growth lies.
Thank you for that. What was the last thing you cut out of the film that we didn't get to see?
I cut a lot of gear stuff, like the nuts and bolts of what kind of gear I brought, how I cooked, what I packed, you probably saw 4 different bike setups. That's a lot of the stuff that I cut. Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was a scene as well in South America that I cut where I kind of explained that little by little, by climbing up that mountain, I eventually got up there, and little by little, you can cycle the world, and how crazy people thought I was for doing this. I got that a lot. Are you alone? Why? What's wrong? Where's your husband? Really, it was, and most of the time I would lie. I would put up a guilty before proven innocent wall, I have to admit, in a lot of foreign countries. And I would say my group is a header behind. But whenever I got specifically women alone, or if I was in the vicinity of young women, I would tell the truth. And I would say, I am alone, and you know what? I'm okay, because I'm brave and I can do this and I'm capable. And someday you should too.
I imagine you met so many different people. We saw some in the film. Who stands out as being memorable people? So many different cultures and doing different things. Who stands out?
Magzoub stands out right away. Magzoub was our big Sudanese contact that you saw. He actually invited us over to his amazing, his guest house, into his family's home. Actually, Sudan's going through a lot right now, and the Sudanese were some of the friendliest people I've ever come across, and he really exuded that. So I have to say, Magzoub from Sudan. I also had a fantastic older couple in Australia who always comes front of mind because I was out there very much alone, and people, so you saw like the road trains in the film, which are multi-trailer, these massive trucks that basically could run anyone off the road, right? So not only was I alone, but like kind of in a dangerous situation. And this couple was out there, they call it gray nomading over there, where basically they were traveling across the country just in their caravan. It's caravanning is what we would call it here. And they were only trying to go about 100 miles a day, 120 miles a day. And they said, oh, we're just gonna match up our schedule with yours. We're gonna see you every night. So they would just show up and surprise me, and they were like my family out there. Awesome. That was really cool.
That's awesome, that's awesome. Now you obviously had to pack light, but I'm curious, did you bring anything back with you? Do you have any little souvenirs from the trip, or is it all memory and footage?
I tried to bring back some things for my family who's in the audience every now and then. So I brought back some art for them. But other than that, no, I try for the less is more approach.
Last question, because I want to open it up to the group here. You obviously did something on an incredibly grand scale, and you had some great advice, toward the end of the film about what we all can do and think about doing for ourselves. What advice do you have to college students setting out on their path to try to get a little bit of that for themselves in a smaller scale, maybe, or a grand scale, whatever you think? Yeah.
Yeah, trust in everything that's happening here, that's for sure. Couldn't have done anything without the University of Florida and all the incredible professors, coaches, colleagues that you have here, right? I would say maybe my biggest takeaway, and look, we're all learning, and I'm a continual, in progress human, but my biggest takeaway from all of this is that, very shaky feeling of something that you feel very called to, that you gravitate towards, right? It might be a drawer that you put, it might be a dream that you put in a drawer called someday. If it makes you uncomfortable, if it gives you those, goosebumps and the chills and it stirs your soul, it's probably worth pursuing. And it's pretty difficult. It's very easy to say and very difficult to do. But in everything that I've done, by following that feeling, it's incredible how much growth that comes from it. And it is very hard to do, but I would say to really try and pursue the unknown as much as possible.
Awesome, thank you. Well, let's open it up. How do you want to just have them take the mic?
Questions?
I have two similar questions. How much were you dreading the editing when you got back of the whole thing? And then the second question was, how did you keep when you were doing the out and about shots? How did you keep the audio so clean?
Thanks for the filmmaking questions. Okay, editing audio. All right, so thanks for asking the editing question, because I had no intention of making this film. And when I decided I wanted to make this film, it was very intentional for me to get it unsponsored and to do it as much on my own as possible. Because as Becky had so nicely mentioned, I've done things with other, outside Nat Geo. I've gone that route. I've gotten sponsorships. I've had media platforms. And this, for me, I wanted to keep it as organic and uninfluenced from me to you. So I knew I wanted to self-edit it then. And that was as you know, are you in the production track? Okay. So it was something I thought about in a lot of South America, that's for sure. Like, am I really, you know what you're getting yourself into with an edit like this, thousands of hours worth of material over 3 years. I was dreading it, but I was also really excited about approaching this storytelling without anyone else involved. And I thought that was actually like a really fun and gratifying part of this. And then as I'm doing this tour, I thought, why not continue with that theme? Why not make this something that's uninfluenced and it's really from me to you? So I continued with that. Audio, it's one of those things. You heard the wind in Bolivia, you heard the wind in Kenya. You just roll with the punches and you get what you can get. I think especially for this film, I put story over everything. So audio was big for me, but I think you get what you can. You control what you can, and the rest you just let it be nat sound, right?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I know that you talked about trying to control what you can control and being in contact with that. What were some of the resources that you used to help you navigate where you were going? And also, I know that a part of your journey in Africa, I believe, you said that you were, Africa or South America, you're saying that you were traveling without a GPS or anything. How was that?
Are you a cyclist by any chance?
No.
Okay, but cyclists in the crowd may be familiar with like Ride My GPS, Strava, Komoot. Yes, okay, so I didn't use any of those, didn't use a cycling computer, and this was also very intentional. I tried to keep this trip as bare bones and kind of uninfluenced as I could. Specifically with navigation, this is a great question. I actually left it more open-ended than anything. So I kind of had a start and an end point, and I let locals kind of show me where I should go or take this road instead of that one. And so navigation I left very open-ended. What was the second question? What was your second question in there?
That was my second question. The first question was just, I guess, trying to navigate what you can control, because I think that's something that a lot of college students are struggling with, and trying to find that balance of letting the road take you where you're supposed to go, the journey take you where it's going. Just how did you find the resources that you needed, and just really grappling what can I control, what can I not control?
It's great. I wish there was a formula and a blueprint to your question, but that's the beauty. There's really not. It's all about, for me, been about maintaining connection with people who are very impactful on my path. A lot of mentors have played a huge role in me, or have played a huge role for paving the path for me. And then just kind of not being afraid to ask for help from them. Also, I think you really hit on a great point with this question, which is, what if I don't know what I'm gravitating towards? And I think in today's world, it's really important to get quiet with yourself, right? So I talked a lot about solitude, whether that's moving meditation, or it could be, yoga, meditation, hot and cold therapy. There's many different ways, right? But to really get to know what your inner voice is, I think is actually a missing part of a lot of, I knew that was something I needed before understanding what it is I felt really called for. And then exploring the unknown. So I think understanding what voices in your head might be those around you, and then which one is your own. So getting quiet within yourself, and then you can really see what you're gravitating towards.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. Celia.
Curious about the silence. Like when we're in such a world where you got your phone and the television and all these things. So when you talk about the solitude aspect, like what was that like, the silence? That part of it. Like how much were you really on your phone? How much were you paying attention to the phone? And what was that like to get used to just that silence, that solitude you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's such a good question, thank you. So there's that little bit in there where I talk about, all right, so after 2 weeks, your body knows what to do, right? It's your mind. You have to start to figure out what you want to do with it. Do you want to distract it with audiobooks? I chomp through audiobooks a lot of times, right? Or podcasts or music. or even calling loved ones. Like, you can distract your mind in certain ways, but you hit the nail on the head. It's that silence. That's where all the power lies. But it's also the hardest work to do. So specifically in South America, I speak broken Spanish, survival Spanish, so enough to get by, but I wasn't able to have in-depth conversations with people for about 3 months. I was really by myself. And you go through a lot of inner dialogue, right? And some not so pretty, but you need to become best friends with yourself. And it's all about that inner dialogue. And I think without the silence, it would have been really hard for me to make as many gains internally. So the silence, el silencio, as they call it in Peru, is, well, in all of Latin America, but el silencio is a thing that they actually refer to a lot in Peru, specifically in the Andes. It's this feeling of el silencio, and it's powerful. Thanks for the question.
I wanted to know, since you found so much freedom being in nature and being away from the constraints of modern life, how do you find meaning in your current life? And yeah, how do you find meaning in your current life since you're not on a cycling journey now?
That is a great question, and one that is all about balance. So going from full immersion into nature and adventure and constant purpose and meaning towards a goal, and then segueing back into the real world, if we want to call it that, right? It's all about just still finding time for nature, still finding time for myself. And that's always a struggle. But that, I think, is where the most beauty lies, if you can find that balance. Great question.
All right. You said that initially when you switched from through hiking to bikepacking, that your motivation was to see other cultures. Mm-hmm. Did that motivation switch at any point throughout your journey?
Switch in terms of?
What motivated you as you take your next trip, as you went from Vietnam to Europe to Africa to South America?
Yeah, such a good question. So what motivated the different routes and different places I wanted to go? I really just went by curiosity and by what I was learning about in the thru hiker and bikepacking niche of words that would get thrown around, like Cairo to Cape Town. It's a lyrical melody, you know, it lures explorers everywhere. So I was like, that I need to do. Yeah, in terms of the route, it was always a progression. Like, I never planned out too much too far ahead of time. I felt like I just kind of observed where I was at and what I needed to do next.
We have time for maybe one question.
Hey Mac, it's
Alex, how's it going, Alex?
Good. So before you set off on your cycling journey, did you do any training on the bicycle beforehand, or did you just kind of train as you went and kind of adapted?
The answer to your question is I did not train before this, nor do I train for any thru hike. You just go. However, I had a lot of injuries in college with soccer. And one thing you can do when you have knee injuries is bike. So I used a bike to get around and to train and to keep up my strength. And then it became more of a way to see the world after that.
Maybe one last one? Anyone? Yep.
So, do you feel like you've really cycled the world, or are you still trying to plan like another cycling trip, or is this it?
That's a perfect last question.
That is a perfect last question. It's never, that's it. It's done, right? It'll evolve into something else. I think it was Robin Davidson who said, trails, they never end, they just change form. And now this is my new uncomfortable, right? Sharing my story and talking to you all, and trying to be very vulnerable with this. But who knows? I'm very drawn to human-powered travel and nature-powered travel like sailing as well. But I think in terms of cycling, I'm content with what this trip has taught me. Thanks for the question.
So before we wrap up, I just want to send a few thank yous. First to the team at the College of Journalism and Communications, a lot of folks here, Jess, Randy, Alex, Matt, Callie, everybody did their part in pulling this off. Also a special welcome to our Dean, Hub Brown, Dean of the College of Journalism and Communications is here. And special thanks to all the folks from the athletics department too. So it's a great, so great to have you back. What an honor for you, for us to have you tell your story, share your film, and send out just an awesome positive message about so many things. Everyone, McKenzie Barney.